Within the faith, the Baha'i faith is the only faith in religious history that has provided each of its followers with a covenant. Not a verbal covenant, it's a covenant that was written down by the founder of the religion himself, Baha'u'lláh.
The Covenant of Baha'u'llah, as I understand it, is the latest extension of the original covenant made by God with his human creatures. The basic covenant is the ancient arrangement by which God promised to send us divine guidance through his messengers. These messengers appear at different intervals of human history. We become a party to the covenant when we recognize the manifestation of God for our time. Each manifestation reinforces this ancient understanding by the arrangement he makes with his people. Shoghi Effendi explains that it has two forms. The first is the covenant that every prophet makes with humanity, or more definitely with his people, that they will accept and follow the coming manifestation, who will be the reappearance of his reality. The second form of covenant is such as the one that Baha'u'lláh made with his people, that they should accept the Master. Under the same category falls the covenant the Master made with the Baha'is, that they should accept his administration after him.
We have in the Covenant of Baha'u'llah and the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Bahá, his son and successor, and the center of the covenant during his ministry, and then after him, Baha'u'llah's great-grandson Shoghi Effendi, and now the Universal House of Justice representing the center of this covenant.
The purpose of the covenant, in a sense, is to keep humanity connected to divine reality from age to age. This divine reality is a reference to the one source, the one truth, the one faith, as revealed to humanity in stages, in accordance with the ability of souls to comprehend. This reality is thus progressively revealed with the successive appearances of the manifestations of God. Now, with each appearance, we seem to invent a new religion, but the whole point is that there's one faith, and you have these different chapters. In another sense, the purpose of the covenant is to ensure the fulfillment of God's will for the human race. Now, there are two documents that contain the provisions of the Baha'i Covenant. The Kitab-i-Ad, which Baha'u'lláh wrote with his own hand, and Kitab-i-Ad means the book of my covenant. And then there's the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Bahá, which he wrote in his own hand. Reading them in tandem and considering their contents together make their inseparable relationship clear. Now, if you read them together, you will see that Baha'u'lláh has made certain points in his Kitab-i-Ad which Abdu'l-Bahá amplifies in the Will and Testament. The Will and Testament completes our understanding of the Kitab-i-Ad and certain provisions of the Kitab-i-Aqdas itself. Generally, our discussion of the covenant focuses on certain provisions on which special emphasis is of course due. These have principally to do with such matters as successorship, the authority to interpret and to legislate, and protection of the faith. These are of course of fundamental importance. And at the time of the passing of Abdu'l-Bahá were emphasized up until this day, and they deserve emphasis. There is far more to the covenant than these. Appreciation of its other provisions is necessary if we are to appreciate the comprehensiveness of its purpose.
In giving us this covenant, Baha'u'llah has safeguarded his community from infighting for power of authority, from us splitting up and becoming disunified. He has ensured that not only the Baha'is who were there and were his followers at the time of his presence here on this realm knew who they should turn to, but he was thinking way, way in advance of those generations to come. And we need to very much appreciate this unique gift of the covenant, and it is uniquely Baha'i.
In the Kitab-i-Ad, Baha'u'llah reaffirms his appointment of Abdu'l-Bahá as his successor, as the center of the covenant. I say reaffirm because this is stated in the Kitab-i-Ad itself. This, of course, this provision is an indescribable prize among Baha'u'llah's bequests to humankind. Among Baha'u'llah's other bequests are the principle and goal of the oneness of humankind. The very second paragraph of the Kitab-i-Ad tells us that the reason that he went through all of this suffering is to bring us this unity, to bring harmony to the world. One of these bequests is also the administrative institutions. And then you have the prerequisites for success, spiritual and material, as well as our relationships to one another and to society. He tells us how to relate to kings, how to relate to one another, what to do about society. Now, included in this guidance is his admonition to us to serve all nations and to strive for the betterment of the world. That's in the Kitab-i-Ad. He says, we admonish you to serve all nations and to strive for the betterment of the world. Now, in the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Bahá tells us how this wondrous system is to be realized. The Will and Testament extends, for instance, the function of authorized interpretation and the appointment of Shoghi Effendi as guardian. It explains for the first time in any literature of the faith how the Universal House of Justice is to be established. You know, that Baha'u'llah tells us about the House of Justice in his writings. He keeps referring things to the Universal House of Justice. He tells us that God will verily inspire them with whatsoever he willeth, but he doesn't tell us how it will come about. You go to the Will and Testament and you find that out. This is part of the completion of the arrangement of the Adas and the Kitab-i-Ad. Now, in this connection also, the matter of establishing the House of Justice and telling us what its functions should be, in this connection, the Will and Testament also reveals the necessity of secondary houses of justice, which we know now as national spiritual assemblies. The members of these secondary houses of justice are the electors of that supreme body. The Will and Testament instructs us as to how the faith is to be protected. It tells us to teach the faith. It elaborates much of the guidance given in the Kitab-i-Ad. Now, taken together, the provisions of these two documents complete the structure of the Covenant of Baha'u'llah, and we are able, both from their texts and from the actions of Abdu'l-Bahá as the exemplar of the teachings, to derive an appreciation of its uniqueness and dynamism. Instruction and experience have made the efficacy of the covenant quite clear, whether as the harbinger of unity or as the very bastion of the faith. The covenant, as we have learned from Abdu'l-Bahá, is indeed the axis of world unity.
Abdu'l-Bahá says it is evident that the axis of the oneness of the world of humanity is the power of the covenant and nothing else. It's the power of the covenant and nothing else.
All that we do revolves around it. The covenant incorporates the essentials of the faith. It connects souls with Baha'u'lláh and his purpose. From this connection, these souls derive the divine confirmations that nourish their faith and energize their efforts. The covenant unites peoples. It trains and prepares human resources. Just read it and see what instructions we get from the two documents. It activates and sustains the system that guarantees success of the plan of God in our time. In other words, it applies practice to principle with a coherence that translates the central theme of the Baha'i revelation into a living and universal reality. The covenant is the ultimate guide for teaching and administration of the faith. Now, Abdu'l-Bahá, as the center of the covenant, is the divinely chosen instrument that connects all elements of the revelation in a workable plan of action. His will and testament, Shoghi Effendi states, should be regarded as the perpetual, the indissoluble link which the mind of him who is the mystery of God has conceived in order to ensure the continuity of the three ages that constitute the component parts of the Baha'i dispensation. Now, what are these three ages? We know the heroic age, the period in which Baha'u'lláh, the Bab and Baha'u'lláh and Abdu'l-Bahá lived, and the great period for massive martyrdoms, that period, and then the period that followed that after the passing of Abdu'l-Bahá, the formative age in which we now live. Meaning this is the age of building, this is the age of shaping the institutions and moving towards a world order, a world civilization. And then the third is the golden age, which we hope will be attained in due course. Now, so Abdu'l-Bahā's role, the things that he did, the way that he lived, connected all of these things because he gave us the explanations, he gave us the full picture of the structure that should guide our actions until the next manifestation of God arrives on the planet. The center of the covenant indeed has left detailed explanations and instructions, both for teaching and for the operation of an administrative order. Now, if the covenant is the axis of the oneness of humankind, Abdu'l-Bahá is at the very center of that axis, both as interpreter and exemplar. Interpreter of the word, he is, with respect to the means of realizing the oneness of mankind. He translates the meaning of the word into intention and deeds, telling us how to activate the divinely ordained system that is to usher in the new world order envisioned by Baha'u'lláh. He also translates meaning in relation to personal conduct by exemplifying the principles, or you might say the virtues, of the revelation in his own life. So we have both the theory of it and the practice of it and the example of it in Abdu'l-Bahá. In his person, as in his words, the covenant becomes a living ideal manifested in both mystical and practical terms. Remember, it was I think the president of Stanford University, when Abdu'l-Bahá spoke there, described Abdu'l-Bahá as a person who tread the mystical path with practical feet. Thus, he is the medium between word and outcome in all the implied purposes of the covenant. Meaning is realized in deed, action, system, structure. Abdu'l-Bahá is the very embodiment of the covenant. Absent Abdu'l-Bahá, the world order of Bahá'u'lláh would not exist. The reality of the covenant would remain hidden.